Two Apache gunships close in on a rogue jet slicing through restricted airspace. No ID, no response, just eerie precision. The pilot? A silent woman with nerves of steel and a flight pattern that defies logic. Just as the Apaches prepare to fire, their comms glitch and a forgotten signal plays. In that instant, everything changes. Who is Norah Grasso, and why does her presence trigger a command no one remembers authorizing? What happens when a ghost returns to the sky under orders no one dares question? Stick around, because what you're about to witness will challenge everything you thought about loyalty, silence, and command. Now, before we go any further, drop a comment below letting us know where in the world you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow's story hits even harder. Norah Grasso didn't flinch when the first warning crackled through her headset. Unidentified aircraft, you are entering restricted airspace. Identify immediately or you will be engaged. She sat alone in the cockpit of the dark twin-Hengi jet, the HUD casting a cold glow against her visor. Her fingers barely moved on the controls. No transponder, no beacon, no insignia. Her presence was a violation of every rule carved into military airspace law, and yet she flew with the calm, methodical certainty of someone not just unafraid, but authorized. Silence. Not defiance, not panic, just absolute quiet from the woman who hadn't spoken since takeoff. In a concrete tower 70 miles away, Colonel David Rawlins leaned closer to the glowing radar screen, his eyes narrowing behind wire-rimmed glasses. The green blip moved with a surgeon's precision, threading needle-wide gaps between no-fly zones like it had flown the route 100 times, maybe more. It had appeared on radar at 4:32, no squawk code, no registration, just a slow, deliberate drift through the one corridor that shouldn't be flyable without intimate knowledge of the grid. He didn't speak for the first full minute. 23 years in air traffic and nothing. Not drones, not cartel aircraft, not even foreign military scouts had moved like this. Could be cartel, someone behind him muttered, chewing nervously on a pen cap. They've been using Beechcraft twins more recently. Maybe a variant. Rawlins didn't answer. The jet's turns were too clean, too disciplined. Cartel birds were sloppy. This thing flew like it had rank. Oh, foreign tech. Recon, maybe? Another voice added. Younger, less certain. Still, Rawlins said nothing. He reached toward the comms panel and toggled the voice link. Brooks, patch in Wolverine 1 and 2. They're closest. Sergeant Elena Brooks spun her chair, typing rapidly. On it, sir. Pinging Apaches now. Patrol frequency locked. Outside, the night sky was silent, save for the thrum of two Apache gunships cutting eastward along their standard border loop. Captain Jason Hawk Mitchell answered first. Voice crisp. Wolverine 1, go ahead, control. Rawlins didn't waste words. You've got a bogey at 10 o'clock, high, 2,000 feet above your vector. No response to hails, no ID. Proceed to visual intercept. Hold formation tight. Copy that, Hawk replied without hesitation. Kincaid, tighten up. Lieutenant Sarah Kincaid clicked her mic. Copy. Dropping back 2 clicks. Shadowing starboard. The Apaches climbed smoothly, banking through moonlight and pushing toward the aircraft's last known vector. No evasive maneuvers, no jamming, just a black, twin-Hengi jet cruising confidently along the invisible edge of national sovereignty. Wolverine 1 locked visual first. Control, this is Wolverine 1. We have the target in sight. Aircraft is matte black, no tail number, no visible external weapon systems. Cockpit canopy is polarized. He hesitated, then added, pilots visible, female, helmeted, no insignia. Kincaid chimed in a second later. Formation's tight. Subject has not altered course. No recognition signals. No flares. Do you have a read on her posture? Rawlins asked. Oh, she's just flying, Hawk replied. Perfectly steady, like she's done it 100 times. No twitch, no tremble. Like we're not even here. Brooks turned slightly in her seat, eyeing Rawlins. Want to raise altitude? Reroute civilian traffic? He shook his head. Not yet. Rawlins leaned on the edge of the table, his voice low and even. Unidentified aircraft. This is United States Air Command. You are in violation of protected airspace. Identify immediately or divert course. The jet gave no reply. Norah Grasso's hands stayed on the throttle and stick, her gaze level. She didn't even glance toward the hovering Apaches flanking her. The engines behind her hummed in perfect sync. No fear, no rush, like she belonged exactly where she was. 10 seconds control, Hawk warned. We're going to hit weapons hot if she doesn't respond. Rawlins didn't respond right away. He stared at the green light still cruising along the map, slicing through high-security territory like she had a laminated pass signed by the Pentagon. Confirm weapon status, he finally said. Systems cold, Hawk replied, but ready. In her own cockpit, Norah exhaled once. Not tired, not tense. It was just time. The sky felt familiar again, like a jacket retrieved after years of dust. The same weight, the same grip of the seatbelt against her hip. And now, the final test. The Apaches shifted closer. Kincaid's voice came in tight, professional. Control, Wolverine 2. No change, no ID, no visual signaling. Recommend escalation protocol. Hold, Rawlins said, standing straighter. His hand hovered over the engagement authorization switch, thumb twitching just once. Brooks' screen flickered. Sir? Rawlins turned his head. Something just glitched on their channel, just a second, but the speakers hissed, static. Then 3 tones, clean, precise, almost melodic. Then a phrase, distorted at first, then sharpening like a blade. Echo Viper Black. She flies, under command. The tower fell silent. Rawlins stared at the speaker like it had grown teeth. Brooks slowly pulled her headset off, blinking. Did you? I heard it, he said. On the comms, Hawk and Kincaid had gone radio silent. For a moment both Apaches hovered motionless, engines growling. Then, without any further words, they peeled away from Norah's flanks. Perfect tactical withdrawal. Not a retreat. A surrender. Wolverine 1 and 2 disengaging. Hawk's voice finally came back, quieter than before. Returning to patrol route. No incident to report. Rawlins didn't say anything. He just stared at the green dot, still moving, still unauthorized, still completely unquestionable. Brooks stared at him, pale. Sir, that code, Echo Viper Black, I've never heard it before. You wouldn't have, he muttered, almost to himself. It hasn't been used in over a decade. He turned back toward the radar and folded his arms tightly. The dot moved west, angling toward airspace only known to a select few with burned clearance files and paper trails erased before they were even written. Brooks whispered, Sir, who is she? But Rawlins just kept watching the radar screen, expression unreadable. Someone, he said quietly, who isn't supposed to exist anymore. And Norah Grasso, still silent, still unhurried, kept flying. The sky made room for her. It always had. Captain Jason Hawk Mitchell didn't speak for the first 20 seconds after they broke formation. That wasn't like him. In fact, Lieutenant Sarah Kincaid had flown with him for nearly 4 years, and she could count the number of times Hawk had let dead air hang between them during an intercept on exactly 0 fingers. But here it was. Radio silence. The kind that didn't come from malfunction or nerves. This silence had weight to it. The kind that comes after seeing something that doesn't fit, doesn't compute, doesn't belong. Kincaid adjusted her altitude, her Apache dipping ever so slightly to the left as the shadow of the twin-tin jet slipped past her canopy. It didn't even wobble in turbulence. No twitch of the rudder, no course correction. Like it was flying on rails. She didn't flinch. Sarah finally said, "I came in close. I know she saw me." Hawk's voice returned, but it was slower than usual, like he was thinking through each word before releasing it. "Yeah, she saw you. Saw me too." They flew level now, cruising on a parallel path to where the jet had been. The target hadn't deviated course. No escape maneuver, no defensive climb. Just that same relentless westward trajectory. And then that signal, the glitch. 3 tones. And then the phrase, clearer than anything else they'd heard all night. Echo Viper Black. She flies under command. Kincaid hadn't recognized the code, but the moment it came through, Hawk had eased his throttle. No command had been issued, no official de-escalation, but they both had felt it. The shift. That sound didn't just suggest clearance. It demanded it. "You ever heard that phrase before?" Kincaid asked, breaking the silence again. "Nope," Hawk replied, "and I don't want to dig into it either." "You think it was real?" He hesitated, long enough that she knew the answer before he said it. "It was real," he said. "Too clean, too old." Kincaid swallowed hard. "Old like classified? Old like buried?" Back at the tower, Rawlins watched the radar track shift slightly as Norah's jet altered altitude. Not by much, just 100 feet down. Enough to avoid satellite pings. Enough to skim under the newer detection grids installed after 2021. She was flying as if she'd memorized the architecture of modern surveillance before it was even finished. "Reeve," he murmured under his breath. He hadn't said that name in over 10 years, hadn't even allowed himself to think about her since the operation that was never filed, under the command that was never acknowledged, with a squad that technically never existed. But there she was, or someone flying just like her, gliding west into airspace that didn't officially exist on most military maps. "She's still flying west," Brooks reported, watching her screen with tight eyes. "Altitude variance is minimal. She's not breaking speed." "She won't," Rawlins said. Brooks looked over. "What is she doing, sir?" Rawlins didn't answer right away. He just exhaled slowly through his nose, leaned over the console, and whispered, "She's going home." In her cockpit, Norah Grasso didn't need to look at her instruments. She had the route memorized. 3-second bursts. Hold the glide. Keep her angled tight enough to avoid line-of-sight radar stations, but wide enough not to trigger proximity defense bubbles. This was the edge of the map. The place only a few knew how to reach. Her hand hovered over the comm switch. She didn't flip it. Not yet. Inside the cockpit, her head ticked a silent countdown in the bottom right corner of her display. 17 minutes until waypoint entry. 6 until final signature lock. Everything else remained dark. All other systems offline. She didn't need avionics. She remembered the sky. She remembered all of it. The tower had tried to identify her. Tried to follow protocol. That was expected. But what the tower hadn't expected, what they never remembered, was that some call signs were designed to be forgotten. That was the insurance. Echo Viper Black wasn't a designation. It was a failsafe. It meant, do not pursue, do not question, do not record. Sarah Kincaid banked hard left, circling away from the path of the now vanished jet, her gut still spinning. "That woman," she said into the comms. "She didn't blink, Hawk. I know. She had us bracketed. If we had fired, we didn't." Silence. Kincaid knew Hawk wasn't being cold. He was being careful. The difference mattered. They weren't dealing with a smuggler or a rogue contractor, not even a foreign op. This was something else. Is something older. "Let me ask you something," she said, voice low. You think she was waiting for us?" Hawk didn't answer for a moment. Then, "Yeah," he said. "She knew we'd be there, and she knew we wouldn't pull the trigger." Kincaid exhaled, biting her bottom lip. "But how?" she asked. "How could she know that? That we'd hesitate?" Hawk's answer was soft, but it landed hard. "Because she helped write the protocol we were about to use." In the control tower, Rollins had stepped away from the main desk and stood by the observation window, staring out toward the horizon. The sky looked the same. Still dark, still quiet. But something had shifted. He knew what she was flying toward. And if she reached it, then everything, the silence, the disappearance, the deletion, would start to uncoil. He tapped his comm headset. "Brooks," he said. "Yes, sir." "Mark the intercept as visual only, no audio confirmation, no tactical engagement." She paused. "You want me to scrub the comms?" He didn't look at her when he answered. "Yes." "And if base command asks?" "They won't," he said. "And if they do, tell them we had a tech issue. Weather anomaly." Brooks hesitated. "You sure, Colonel?" He turned just enough that she saw the seriousness in his eyes. "She's not hostile," he said. "She's just returning to position." Out over the western basin, Norah Grasso passed into a new radar envelope. For a moment she disappeared from all screens. No satellite ping, no land-based contact. Then, on a single encrypted channel, a faint voice broke through the static. "Echo Viper Black," the voice said. "Status acknowledged, approach vector open, wind at your back." Norah didn't respond. She didn't need to. The signal itself had cleared the path. And in the tower, Rollins whispered, "God help us if they wake her up again." But the sky said nothing. It just kept making room. Colonel David Rollins stood motionless in the upper control deck, arms crossed tightly, jaw clenched, his eyes locked on the last known coordinate of the jet that had no right to exist. Below him, the radar station buzzed in soft hisses and blinking lights, the usual noise of the night shift. But everything in that room felt heavier now. It wasn't just the rules being tested tonight. It was memory, and trust, and something older than protocol. Fear of the things buried on purpose. "Still no new ping?" Sergeant Brooks said, her voice tight with calculation, like she was trying to say it clinically. "If she's out there, she's under the next sweep arc, or she's gone dark completely." Rollins didn't look at her. "She's not gone." Brooks tapped a few keys, the sound sharp and hollow in the quiet. "Sir, I'm getting a weapons status request from Northern Sector Command. They're asking for confirmation of the engagement. What do you want me to send back?" He didn't answer at first. The question wasn't just technical. It was political. An aircraft enters black zone airspace, fails to respond, 2 Apaches intercept, and then peel off. Voluntarily. It would raise flags. It would raise audits. And if anyone decided to dig into that phrase, Echo Viper Black, there wouldn't be a file. There'd be redactions. Entire pages whited out with nothing left but a stamp. No index. "I'll take it," Rollins finally said, stepping toward the desk. "Patch me through secure." Brooks complied, rerouting the line and handing him the comm headset. A few seconds later, a clipped voice came through. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Pressman, Northside Command. Do you confirm weapons were locked and disengaged per standard intercept rules?" Rollins' voice didn't flinch. "Affirmative on lock, negative on engagement." "Calls?" "Non-response from target. Signal anomaly received. Flight diverted." There was a pause. "Anomaly?" Rollins stared at the radar screen. "We received what sounded like an old clearance signal. 3-tone encryption with vocal overlay. It matched command-tier protocols, possibly a legacy code." Another pause, longer this time. "Then repeat the phrase. Echo Viper Black. She flies under command." The line went quiet. Not the kind of quiet where someone's listening. The kind where someone is weighing options, whether to push forward or back away slowly. Pressman returned, voice flatter. "Did you record it?" "Negative. Audio loop corrupted, mid-receipt." "Do your pilots have visual confirmation on the subject?" "Affirmative. Female pilot, helmeted, no insignia. Matte black aircraft, no flare, no distress." "And they disengaged on their own authority?" "They disengaged when the signal came through. So did we." There was no follow-up. No challenge, no reprimand. Just a long exhale. Then, "Roger that. We'll close the inquiry here. Treat it as a false intercept. Weather balloon classification. Copy?" Rawlins nodded to no one in particular. "Copy." The line clicked dead. Brooks turned toward him, her brow creased with unease. "Sir? Weather balloon?" Better than admitting the sky said something we weren't supposed to hear. Kincaid flew formation beside Hawk's Apache again, their gunships now moving westward, away from the target's course. But neither of them had shifted their attention. Every few seconds they glanced at their digital maps, watching for something to reappear, even though both knew whatever that jet was, it could ghost its signal whenever it wanted. "I keep thinking about her face," Kincaid said, "or what I could see of it." "Wasn't fear," she added. "Wasn't even detachment. It was like we weren't part of her mission. Like we were just air traffic. She knew we wouldn't engage." "You sure about that?" Hawk paused. "No, but she was." The strange part wasn't just her calm. It was how it affected them. Hawk had been flying intercepts for nearly a decade. He'd faced cartel smuggler jets that pushed Mach 1.2 through storm corridors. He'd gone after Chinese drones faking heat signatures to mimic civilian aircraft. But this felt like being tested, watched, measured. It wasn't that Norah Grasso didn't respond. It was that she didn't need to. Back in the jet, Norah continued her descent. She was now flying at 7,800 feet, dipping just below the triangulation sensors between Falcon Ridge and Outpost Theta, a corridor that no longer officially existed. They'd closed it down in 13 after a satellite realignment. At least that was the public reason. The real reason was simpler. They stopped trusting who might come back through it. She adjusted a single dial. The cockpit remained silent. No autopilot hum, no AI drone whisper. It was all manual. She liked it that way, trusted her own instincts more than any system ever built. Behind her eyes, old memories burned like vapor trails. Names of operations never spoken aloud anymore. Faces of people who had disappeared with medals that would never be worn. She remembered when this route had been a fallback, an emergency path for classified returns. No markers, no lights, just gut memory. And she still had it. Inside the Pentagon's sub-level server vault, an automated protocol triggered in a forgotten directory. The phrase, Echo Viper Black, pinged across one dormant node, then 2, then 6. An old failsafe code. One designed not to activate systems, but to suppress them. In the control tower, Brooks' screen blinked. A silent alarm. Nothing loud, no buzzers. Just a gray notification marked EVB, silence protocol engaged. "Sir," she whispered. Rawlins turned slowly. Something just triggered. He came closer, eyes narrowing. The words on screen were familiar. Too familiar. He reached down, typed a clearance code, and hit Enter. The screen erased itself. "What did it mean?" Brooks asked. Rawlins looked at her, the faintest edge in his voice. "It means whatever's happening now started a long time ago." She opened her mouth to say something, but thought better of it. Out in the distance, past the outer boundary of known airspace, Norah flicked on her inner comms just once. Briefly. A different frequency this time. one that hadn't been used since before satellite encryption standards changed. One line, Echo Viper Black, en route, clearance confirmed. The voice that came back was nearly static, but there was emotion in it. Relief, maybe. Copy, Norah, we see you. Final protocol awaits. He shut the comm again. In the control tower, Brooks finally spoke after a long silence. If this was an op, sir, it would have had a handler somewhere up the chain. Rollins nodded slowly. Yeah, he said, and it looks like we're not the chain anymore. He didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified, because whatever command she was flying under, it wasn't his. It wasn't anyone's. And that, more than anything, meant the rules didn't matter anymore. The sound came again, this time deeper in the system, hidden from the main channel, like a ghost whispering in the hallways of a building long since abandoned. Not a glitch, not interference. A purposeful signal, cut into 3 precise tones, like a melody that meant something only to those who remembered a song that no longer played on the radio. In the radar control tower, Colonel David Rollins didn't flinch. He was the only one who recognized what it meant the first time. But now it was back. Again. Unprompted. Not from the jet. From the system itself. A buried artifact, waking up. Sergeant Brooks leaned forward slowly at her console, brow furrowed. Sir, we're getting another instance of that tone sequence. This one didn't come from the aircraft. It's originating internally, like our own system is bouncing it. Rollins stepped in close, resting his palm on the cold metal edge of the console. Loop back protocol, he muttered. It's pulling from something stored locally. Brooks hesitated. Why would our system store that kind of code? Because it's not just a code, Rollins said quietly. It's a trigger. He didn't elaborate. There was no point. She wouldn't find it in any manual, any training doc, any orientation packet. Echo Viper Black wasn't a program, it was a relic. A totem left buried in the circuits of systems not even designed to handle what it represented. Because no one had ever expected her to come back. Out beyond the tower's reach, the twin-gen jet continued its flight in perfect silence. Norah Grasso remained focused, fingers resting gently on the controls as the plane descended another 500 feet, threading into a zone that didn't show up on civilian maps and wasn't labeled on military ones either. It was a scar in the sky, one carved by programs the public would never know existed, flown by pilots who didn't appear in rosters or at funerals. A green light blinked 3 times on her dash. No alarm, no spoken alert. Just the light. She smiled. That meant someone had heard her. She wasn't flying blind anymore. The cockpit remained quiet, but inside her helmet, Norah's mind drifted back to the first time she heard that tone. Years ago, during her final Black Ops deployment. Back then, it hadn't been a recall code. It had been a permission slip, the signal that told her and her unit they had authority to act under a higher directive, above ranks, beyond borders. Tonight it had played again. Not a mistake. A welcome. Behind her, the jet's engines purred steadily, their notes low, smooth, untouched by stress. The airspace she had entered was thick with surveillance netting, but none of it responded now. No alarms, no red dots on screen, just silence. The silence of compliance, the silence of recognition. At NORSEC, Lieutenant Colonel Pressman stood in front of a black glass panel in a sealed operations room 2 floors below the primary command center. He was sweating, not visibly, but inside his starched collar, beneath his polished ribbons. A file lay open in front of him, marked only with a 3-letter designation, EV. He had just lied to his own superiors. Not to deceive, but to delay, because if this really was Norah Grasso, if she truly was flying again under an active directive, then everything they had assumed about the status of Project Emberlight was wrong. Or worse, never truly shut down. He reached for a secure phone built into the wall. It hadn't rung in 6 years. He picked it up. No dial tone, no option to call. He just waited. After 10 seconds, the line clicked. A male voice answered, tired, slow. This line was never supposed to be used again. Pressman cleared his throat. It's been used. Sir, we received an EVB clearance. Aircraft responded with full code integrity. Visual confirms match. She's airborne. There was a pause, then, you're sure it's her? I have voice logs from the Apache team. Pilot is female, helmeted, flying with 0 drift at combat-readied flight specs. She acknowledged the vector and used the phrase verbatim. The voice was quiet now, but more alert. How long has she been in? 27 minutes and counting. No engagement, no deviation. Radar shows she's moving toward the basin corridor. Another silence. Let her go. No, I said let her go. The line went dead. Pressman didn't move. He just hung up the phone and stared at the wall, where a ghosted outline of a map still lingered on the smart glass. Faded, but not erased. A forgotten flight path that had once connected 5 invisible bases and 1 objective never spoken out loud. Back in the tower, Brooks had started to piece together something dangerous. She turned to Rawlins, her voice barely above a whisper. Sir, I just ran a full trace on the signal origin. It's stored on an auxiliary hardline that's been decommissioned since... Don't say the year, Rawlins cut in. But just don't. She swallowed. She's not hostile, he said again. She's not foreign, and she's not lost. Brooks looked at him, eyes wide. Then what is she? Rawlins turned back to the window, where nothing but night met the horizon. He's classified. In the cockpit, Norah finally pulled back the throttle slightly, letting the jet ease into its glide. The last 10 miles of the corridor would be visual only. No radar, no external signals, no lights. She could see the landmark now, barely visible under the starlight. A flattened ridge with a crescent-shaped gash carved into the landscape. To most, it looked like a geological accident, but she knew better. It was the entrance. Not to a base, not to a hangar, to a promise. The kind made in Cold War rooms with no windows when things had gone too far, and backup plans needed backup plans. Norah reached up and flipped the final switch. The jet's power systems dimmed, instruments faded, even the HUD disappeared. She flew by memory now. Inside the tower, every screen displaying her signal went black simultaneously, not just lost, cut, severed like someone had sliced the feed at the source. Brooks gasped. She's gone. Rawlins didn't move. No, he said. She's arrived. And somewhere far below, deep inside the ridge, a different voice crackled to life on a forgotten speaker system. Echo Viper Black, vector secure, welcome home. The corridor curved inward, narrowing between jagged rock outcrops and sloping desert shale, descending in a slow spiral toward a basin that shouldn't have existed on any topographic map. Norah guided the jet with a hand so steady it could have been sculpted from steel, every movement fluid, instinctual. Her helmet visor reflected no light, just black glass and memory. The landing strip came into view only at the last second. A weathered black surface stitched into the land like a scar. No lights, no beacon. She aligned the nose and dropped flaps in a single motion. The wheels touched down with a sigh of rubber against concrete, and she taxied straight into a natural overhang carved from the base of the ridge. Stones swallowed the aircraft whole. The concrete door sealed behind her with a hydraulic thud. Silence fell. Thick. Reverent. Norah sat still in the cockpit for one more moment, eyes forward. Then she shut down the engine. Lights blinked on inside the hangar. dim, recessed, green-tinted, the kind that had been designed for nights when seeing was optional and hiding was essential. Along the far wall, a panel hissed and slid open, revealing a long corridor, bare concrete and steel. No personnel waited to greet her, no fanfare, just a place that had been waiting for her return, like an animal waiting for its heartbeat to start again. She stepped down from the cockpit without ceremony. Her boots struck the floor, a sound she hadn't heard in nearly 9 years. Her name wasn't spoken, but the air felt like it knew her, familiar, dustless. This place had not been abandoned, it had been maintained. For her. As she passed beneath a row of silent motion sensors, a red LED flickered to life on a wall-mounted terminal. Then came a voice. Old, not synthetic. A recording, but personal. Welcome back, Norah. No rank, no designation, just her name. At NORSEC, Lieutenant Colonel Pressman stood before an encrypted server marked for legacy use only. He'd had to pull 2 override keys and a retinal scan just to open the vault where it was stored. Inside the narrow room, a single screen glowed with the last known log entry from Project Emberlight. Subject: Grasso. Norah J. Status: disavowed. Contained: honor withheld. Command clearance: Echo Viper Black valid. Reactivation conditions unspecified. He leaned against the metal rack and rubbed his temples. She'd disappeared in 2016. No official record of her death. No final deployment orders. Her unit, a 6-person ghost team formed in the shadows of Joint Special Operations Command, had been decommissioned in theory, scattered by reassignment or silence. But Norah had never resurfaced. Until now. Pressman hit a button on the terminal and played back her last mission transcript. It was broken, missing chunks, half-corrupted. But one line came through clean. If this fails, I disappear. That's the deal, not because I want to vanish, but because I'll be the last one who remembers. He stopped the recording, let the words hang in the cold. She hadn't just vanished. She'd volunteered to be forgotten. In the tower, Rollins sat in his office with a printed file spread out across his desk, most of it blacked out. He'd gone into storage himself. No digital trace. Just a locked drawer with a hard copy he'd kept for years under the file heading Graybirds. Inside it, one name appeared multiple times, Grasso, and Rollins remembered the girl from the briefing room in Quantico, the only one who didn't flinch when presented with an operational map labeled Denied Territory, Execute Without Retrieval. She hadn't blinked. She'd nodded. You're the only one who didn't ask for backup, he'd said then. I don't plan to fail, she'd replied. She had made good on that promise, up until the moment she vanished. And now here she was again, skimming radar, reawakening protocols no one had touched in a decade. Brooks knocked once on his open office door. Sir? He didn't look up. Yeah. I did some digging, quietly. Checked the cold archive for military aviators marked deceased or discharged in the last 15 years who had associated blackout orders. There were 6. Rollins turned toward her now. 3 are confirmed KIA. 2 are in psychiatric lock under sealed federal custody, she continued. And the 6th? He asked, though he already knew. Brooks hesitated. Norah J. Grasso, former U.S. Air Force, attached to SOCOM for a duration of 3 years, promoted and redacted in the same year, then gone. No death certificate, no formal discharge. Just a ghost. Brooks looked pale. Sir, I think she was trained for something even we weren't supposed to know existed. She wasn't just trained, Rollins said. She was built for it. In the Ridge facility, Norah moved deeper into the compound. It had changed in small ways. Improvements in airflow, new sealants on the doors, cleaner wiring conduits. But the bones of the place were the same. She walked past the empty locker room where the others used to prep. Past the briefing station, its projection walls dark now. Past the long mirror that had always made her feel like she was looking at someone else. A door opened at the end of the hallway. Manual, not digital. She placed her hand on the scanner, and after a moment the lock hissed open. Inside was a room no one but Norah had authorization to enter. The command chamber. There was only one terminal in the room, one chair, one purpose. She sat. The system powered on the moment she touched the keys. A soft hum began beneath the floor. Then a voice, live. "Norah?" said the man on the other end of the line. "Weller," she replied, her voice calm for the first time in years. General Thomas Weller hadn't spoken to her since the day she went dark, and even now, he didn't sound surprised to hear her voice. He sounded like he'd been expecting it. Just not tonight. "You used the signal." "I had to." "No." She didn't answer immediately. Her hands hovered over the console. Lights blinked in sequence. "Because the sky isn't ours anymore," she said finally. "Because the map's changed, and no one's watching the edges." There was a pause. "Them, do you know what happens if you open it again?" "I do." "Will you be seen?" "Deal with it." "I already have." Weller exhaled but didn't object. "Then do it," he said. Norah reached under the console, unlocked a small panel, and slid out a crystal memory unit no larger than a deck of cards. She placed it into the slot, and the screen shifted. A single line appeared. "Project. Exemplar light. Reactivation in progress." And beneath that, in faint gray, authority, Echo Viper black. She leaned back in the chair, the silence thick around her. She wasn't just back. She was reactivating the one thing no one wanted to remember, because deep down, they knew they might need it again. The first time Jason Hawk Mitchell heard the phrase, "orders above the map," he was 19 and still in flight school. An old instructor had muttered it during a classified briefing gone wrong, where half the documentation was redacted and the other half just didn't make sense. It stuck with him, more superstition than protocol. The kind of phrase whispered between grizzled pilots over cheap bourbon, usually followed by silence and a quick change of subject. Tonight, it echoed again. The words had come from NORSEC's secure channel not long after the Apaches disengaged from the jet. Just 4 words, passed to Colonel Rawlins like a confession wrapped in a warning. "Stand down, no questions. Orders above the map." It meant the sky didn't belong to them anymore. Back at base, Hawk stood outside the hangar beneath a red security light, helmet in hand, watching the night horizon like it might crack open and explain itself. Kincaid joined him a moment later, sipping coffee, her other hand trembling just slightly. "She wasn't just a pilot," she said. "No. She had something on board." "Maybe. She was the something on board." Hawk didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everything about that encounter haunted them. Not because they'd failed to engage, or because they'd broken protocol, but because everything inside them said they should have, and yet everything about her presence made them glad they didn't. Actor Jim Vitek, Roman numeral. "What happens if she comes back?" Kincaid asked softly. "She didn't leave," Hawk said. "She landed." "You think someone let her in?" He turned toward her finally, his face shadowed in the red light. "No, I think she was never locked out." In the tower, Colonel Rawlins reviewed the last 10 minutes of radar footage on a secure loop. Not to track Norah's flight, he already knew that trail was cold, but to see what the system didn't record. He watched, frame by frame, as her blip vanished the moment she crossed into the basin corridor. Not jammed, not lost. Vanished. Like the system itself recognized she was exempt. It wasn't deletion. It was exclusion. Brooks stood a few feet behind him, hesitant. "Sir, we've had 3 external pings from Upper Defense Command, 2 from NORSEC, 1 from Joint Intel Bureau. They all want a report. Tell them the report is being written, Rawlins said. It's not being written. I know. He leaned forward, muting the playback. They don't want facts. They want deniability. They want me to say we made a mistake, that our systems glitched, that we let something go because we didn't know better. Brooks frowned. Did we? Rawlins looked at her then, the faintest weight behind his gaze. We knew better. That's why we let her pass. Then why is everyone acting like she's a threat? He didn't answer that, not directly. Instead, he opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a sealed envelope. It was yellowed around the edges, marked with an embossed emblem she didn't recognize. A 7-pointed star within a circle, with no words, no military branch affiliation. Rawlins laid it on the desk like it might bite. You ever heard of Operation Dry Veil? He asked. She shook her head. Good, he said. You weren't supposed to. He slid the envelope back into the drawer and closed it. But Norah Grasso was the reason that envelope exists. Brooks hesitated. Sir, if this is something above clearance. It's not above clearance, he said. It's beneath it, buried, deep enough that even the people issuing those stand-down orders tonight don't really know why they're doing it. They just know they're supposed to. She stepped back slightly, the air in the room heavier now. So, what now? Now? Rawlins rubbed his temple. Now, we wait. And we pray that whatever brought her back is something we can still control. Deep inside the ridge, Norah stood at the central console, the glow of the interface illuminating her face in flickers. The reactivation sequence was complete. The facility was fully online. Energy flowed through the walls like blood returning to a long frozen body. A low chime sounded, a message. Encrypted, direct. She accepted it. The screen changed. A line of text appeared. It said, Echo Viper Black has returned. Protocol tree fire is open. Awaiting keyholder confirmation. She reached into her flight suit and withdrew a thin titanium band. Inside it, a microchip, no longer used by any current system. She pressed it to the reader. Confirmation accepted. The interface changed again. This time, what appeared wasn't text. It was a video feed. Grainy, black and white. Dated, November 12, 2015. A meeting room. A long table. Seated at the head, General Thomas Weller. He was younger then, but the weight of responsibility already showed in his eyes. In the recording, Weller spoke clearly. This is the final conditional. If Norah Grasso ever returns to Ridgepoint on her own, without recall, she is authorized to activate tree fire. She has sole discretion. No chain of command above her, no override. He paused, as if knowing how surreal those words would sound years later. Because if she's returned, it means we waited too long. The video cut off. Norah stood still for a moment. Tree fire. She hadn't thought about that word in years. The last operation. The theoretical one. A fail-safe plan created in case the homeland was ever compromised. Not by invasion, but by internal collapse. It was never supposed to be used. A deterrent. She was now its only authorized executor. Back on the surface, a small drone lifted off from the camouflaged landing strip, rising into the sky on a vertical climb. It pinged the satellite network with a scrambled code, one that hadn't been used since the Afghanistan withdrawal. At NORSEC, alarms didn't go off. That was the point. Instead, Pressman received a silent alert on his private terminal. He opened the file. The blinking icon marked tree fire, active watch status. He didn't say anything for several seconds. Then he picked up the phone again. This time, it didn't ring. A voice answered. You've waited a long time to call this number. She's reactivated it, Pressman said. Then you need to disappear the record. No trace, no echo. I've already done it. The line went dead. At the same time, in an underground war room at Langley, a different screen lit up. An AI-driven defense analyst flagged a code not seen since 2015. It was logged, archived, notified up one chain of command and no further. And that's exactly how Norah had designed it. She was above the map now, and soon she would decide whether the rest of the country stayed on it. The sun was just beginning to edge over the distant ridge, slicing gold into the endless gray of the desert. A thin shimmer touched the lip of the basin, turning sand into silver and shadow into something almost holy. Norah Grasso stood at the edge of the cliff, helmet tucked beneath her arm, boots planted on ground that had once been considered off-limits to anyone still breathing. Behind her, the facility was quiet, active, alive, but no longer humming with urgency. It wasn't a bunker anymore. It was a sanctuary. A place built for emergencies, yes, but also for beginnings. And today, for the first time in years, it wasn't waiting for war. It was waiting for peace. She'd made her decision. Tree fire would not be fully enacted. The system had offered her total control, the ability to erase, reboot, or even retaliate. It had opened every option from counterintelligence smokescreens to asset strikes and internal government disruptions. The full spectrum of nation-set protocols, written when the worst-case scenario wasn't invasion, but collapse from within. And Norah had shut it down. With a single press of the override button, she'd archived the entire program. Tree fire was no longer a threat, it was a relic. She had walked away from the console, walked through the corridors once echoing with purpose, now resonant with closure. Her footsteps weren't heavy. They were free. The last door she passed through had closed behind her without a hiss or clang. Just a soft click, like the ending of a well-written sentence. Above, the sky was beginning to clear. The air was soft. No inbound intercepts. No alarms. No tailing jets. Only quiet. In the radar tower, Colonel David Rawlins sat at his desk, coffee cooling in his hand. The logbooks were still open, but the last entry remained blank. He hadn't written anything down since Norah disappeared from the radar screens 48 hours ago. No one had asked any questions. No one had filed a formal inquiry. It was like it had never happened. That's how Echo Viper Black worked. The deeper it went, the less evidence it left behind. Brooke stepped in, slower than usual. She didn't speak until he looked up. "There's a new satellite ping from the basin," she said softly. "Just a drone relay, no ID, but it's transmitting a standard atmospheric update package. Local weather data, wind speed, ionization levels." Rawlins raised a brow. "From the ridge?" She nodded. He leaned back slowly, then smiled. A small thing, almost private. "She left us a message." Brooks tilted her head. "Sir?" He turned the monitor toward her, pointing to the signal frequency. It was harmless, routine. But it was also embedded with a timestamp and one specific hexadecimal signature. A digital fingerprint used by exactly one pilot in military records. "Norah Grasso. She's telling us she's still out there," Rawlins said. "But she's not running. She's watching." Brooks exhaled. "So, what now?" "Now we stop looking for ghosts," he said, "and start learning from them." 1,000 miles away, General Thomas Weller stood on the balcony of a secured facility in Virginia, staring over the tops of pine trees as wind cut through the branches. His aide stepped up behind him, tablet in hand. "Sir, the anomaly has ceased transmitting. Last recorded action was a non-lethal system shutoff." Weller nodded once. "No action required," he said. The aide paused. "If anyone ever asks." "They won't. And if they do?" He turned, gaze cold and calm. Tell them she did what we never could. She chose not to press the button. The aide left without another word. In a small hangar carved into the side of the ridge, Norah opened an old locker marked with her initials, painted in a faded gray that had been half scratched away by time. Inside was a folded flight suit, an old service patch with no squad number, and a single photo. Her and 5 others, shoulder to shoulder, faces half-deckened, each wearing the same nameless smile of people who had seen too much but still knew who they were. She took the photo out and ran a finger along the bottom. They were all gone now, dispersed, lost. Some dead. Some missing in ways that no report could explain. But their legacy didn't have to be destruction. It could be something else. It could be refusal. Norah walked out to the edge of the runway where her jet now sat, powered down, shielded from satellite view by the natural contours of the rock. She didn't plan to fly it again, at least not under those directives. Instead, she would wait. There were other threats now. Cyber shadows, quiet wars fought in banks and wires and thoughts. But not everything needed a missile to be diffused. Sometimes it just needed someone who still believed the sky could be something more than a battlefield. Her comms buzzed once. It wasn't an alert. Just a message. Text only. Wolverine 1. You still up there? Huh? No. No. Norah smiled. She keyed a reply. Echo Viper, always. Then she shut the comms off for good. The desert wind rolled through the basin, warm now, brushing dust over the jet's wings like a blessing. The sky above her opened up in every direction. No targets, no shadows, just space. She had disappeared once for a mission she didn't know would cost her everything. Now she would stay hidden, not for secrecy, but for peace, no protection. Norah Grasso was still flying, but not as a weapon. This time she was the reason one never had to be used.